gravitated towards Cindy, and Cindy was a lot of fun.
Oh, Cindy, you should dress up as Marilyn for the camera. Oh, I know.
She loved being on camera, just hamming it up. Cindy always saw the best in people, and she was a very, very trusting. But she met some people that she shouldn't have met.
What else is new? I just have an update on my bloodline.
She was so wrapped up in the whole thing that she was like a captive.
The effort they went to, it was pure evilness.
I'm worried. Where are you? Please call me before you leave the airport.
You're not thinking that there was such danger coming.
It's April 12th, 1984, in Los Angeles. 25-year-old Cindy Monkman sits in the audience of hit game show The Price is Right. Alongside her are her 24-year-old sister Kathy and their grandma Estelle.
Cindy was always obsessed with The Price is Right. She watched that show religiously. We went every year to Santa Monica to visit our grandma, doing these wild adventures all throughout LA. Cindy was always initiating stuff like, hey, we're going to do this now. Let's go do this. Very adventurous, wanting to travel, try new things. Cindy said, we are going to go on The Price is Right. She's like, I'm going to get on that show. I know how to do it. I know the formula. We down dressed me to the max, and then we put her in this bright hot fuchsia shirt, made her hair super big. We really dolled her up so that she would get chosen.
John, I have a vacant spot right here. What are you going to do about that?
We're going to try to fill it with Cynthia Monkman.
You know, there's Cindy and my grandma and me. You can see I'm grabbing her and like have this big look of shock. I mean, that was a peak moment for her.
Cynthia,
That was more of a big deal than like any even birthday or anything like that, you know, for her to be on TV.
What do you want to do?
She really wanted that kind of spotlight, I guess. I was so happy for her that she got on there. And there she is meeting her idol, Bob Barker. It was a really great, great day and a great memory.
The naturally extroverted Cindy, who loves being the center of attention, started life in the sunshine.
Cindy was born September 16th, 1958 in Pensacola, Florida. I came along 14 months after Cindy was born. In many ways, we were like twins, you know, I think, because we were pretty inseparable and we did everything together and, you know, we were best friends.
Cindy, Kathy, and their younger brother John spent their early childhood in Florida, together with parents Jack and Dorothy.
My dad was working as a psychologist. Our mother was a stay-at-home mom.
In 1963, doctors diagnosed Dorothy with breast cancer.
When it became clear that she was not going to survive, my dad packed us all up and moved back to rural Illinois, which is where she was from. She passed the end of October, 65. She was 36. We were affected growing up without our mom, for sure. You just don't have an internal compass that you have when you have a mother.
Dad Jack marries Marjorie McQueen in 1971. Cindy and the rest of her family carry on with small-town life in Champaign, Illinois.
My family moved into a house that was about a block and a half from Cindy's house. And we were instant friends.
Cindy did make friends easily. She was a very innocent kind of person, extremely sensitive.
In 1980, Kathy moves to Arizona to enroll in nursing school. Cindy follows her sister, and 2 years later, she completes a master's degree in community health education.
We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of partying back then, actually. There was something about our dynamic that was very magnetic to other people, to the point where they would tease us and say it's the Monkman Sister syndrome. We were each other's life force in a lot of ways, but we both had our demons we had to meet.
In 1983, Cindy receives an offer that she cannot refuse.
She got this great job opportunity heading up a wellness program at a major corporation in Minneapolis.
It really was Cindy's dream job because she had spent years being a nutritionist and working in diet programs and schools. It paid well and it was a great job.
It was really, really hard to say goodbye to her. Of course, this was before the internet or cell phones. Long distance calling was very expensive. She was really into doing things on cassette tapes.
Miss Katie? Hello. It's Miss Cindy. Hello. Today is Monday, I think it's the 14th, May 14th, and it's 9:45.
You would just be talking like you're talking to the person on the phone, but you're speaking into this cassette player, and then we would mail off the cassettes to each other back and forth. We did that for months.
Okay, so let's see. What else is new? I have to tell you about update on my love life. Did you know I had a date on Saturday night? He's the guy from work, the blonde mag, and he's really nice.
A lot of it was about boys. She was always looking for the tallest guy in the room. She loved blondes. She called it the caramels, which was attraction, that infatuation. That feels really good. She was definitely looking for that with somebody. Minneapolis was a very corporate, very settled life, and she just didn't feel like she really fit there, and she wanted to still be kind of party girl. So she left it and moved back to Arizona. I was thrilled.
Always restless, Cindy returns to Mesa in late 1986.
She didn't even really have a big plan when she moved back, so she was pretty footloose and fancy-free. We were both living in Mesa. I was living in my little house, and Cindy was living in a nearby apartment. And it was probably pretty soon after moving back, she met Mark, and that was a big deal. Mark Maurer was Mark in the Dark on KDKB, the nighttime DJ. DJs back then were rock stars. Their face might be on the side of a bus. She jumped into that relationship pretty quickly. It was wild. A lot of passion, a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. She was having a lot of fun with it. She was having a lot of angst with it too. It pushed a lot of insecure buttons in her, being with somebody that kind of well-known and popular and stuff. They had a lot of extreme highs and lows. I think they dated for close to a year. There was a lot of drama between her and Mark. Mark had a previous relationship with a woman who was murdered, and it was never solved. You know, it kind of freaked her out, so she knew it needed to end.
Cindy telephones Mark to end the relationship in July 1988. She records their conversation as a keepsake.
I miss you very deeply.
Well, I miss you too, Mark.
Just let you know that I love you from the bottom of my heart. Very much. How do you feel about me?
I still care about you, and I still love you, but I think that we're on a different wavelength right now, and it's silly for you to try to force to be somebody you're not. I feel like I really want to be on this track to taking better care of myself, and I've been doing really good with it.
You know, she was getting close to 30 and watching her friends get married and have kids.
It was just, I know it's time for me to change my life.
A month after the breakup with Mark, Cindy joins the rest of the Monkmans at Monkey Spoon, the family's vacation cottage on the Maine coast.
We had been going there since the early 70s.
Darling.
That was where we spent most of our summer holidays.
Johnny, smile, you're on candid camera. Hey, John. Your picture's being taken.
There's my bro, putting on his Monkey Spoon t-shirt. We all had t-shirts with the logo of the cottage on them. And there's Cindy.
Oh, Cindy, you should dress up as Marilyn for the camera. Oh, I know.
She's saying, I love you so very, very, very much. It was good for her to be there and with family. She and Mark had just broken up like a month before. She was still needing a lot of reassurance that she did the right thing. You know, it's going to get better and you made the right decision. But on that trip, she was really struggling I'm sure she was suffering from depression. She felt lost. She did a very good job of covering it up. But I definitely knew her very well, and I could feel it every single minute of every single day. She brought the fun in our family. And we lost that because she was like the spark.
It's December 17th, 1988. Cindy Monkman attends the wedding of her close friend Linda Smith at Point Tapatio Resort in Phoenix.
I met Cindy. We were both enrolled in a course at Arizona State University in Tempe, but Cindy and I just sort of hit it off. So here I am talking to Cindy on the left, and she was asking me who certain people were. I was very happy to see that she'd brought a date, Michael, from Germany, and she seemed very comfortable with him. I do remember Cindy coming over at some point, and she held out her finger with a ring on it, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you're engaged." And she said, "No, I'm married." And I remember my first reaction was, "What?" I remember going over to my husband and saying, "Cindy found the love of her life."
Rewind 2 months to October 8th. A mutual friend invites Kathy and Cindy for a night out in town. She takes the sisters to Bobby McGee's, a trendy night spot in Mesa.
She had met these two brothers. Michael and Rudy Appelt were from Dusseldorf, Germany, and she had kind of hit it off with one of them, and the other brother was 6'7" and blonde. I went and joined them, and Cindy was already wrapped around this tall, blonde guy. They looked wealthy. Michael was wearing a tuxedo with all kinds of, diamond earrings, gold rings, gold chains. Rudy was wearing a suit, so they stood out. After the night was over, these guys left kind of early, and so the three of us went out to breakfast, and Cindy had the stars in her eyes. He was so into me. He just was so into me. He even asked me to marry him. I was like, "Oh, please, don't even," or something like that. And she just swung her head around and snapped at me and said, "Do not burst my bubble, Kathy." Like that. It's taking her out of this depression. She's feeling like $1 million, and you gotta let her have it. She and Mark had just broken up. There's nothing better going through a breakup than having somebody come along who thinks you're just absolutely everything. It scared me because here comes Mr. Glitz and glamour and way into the party scene, this big unknown person. Michael was supposedly a big deal, but she had just come out of a relationship with somebody who was a big somebody. It was a lot of a repeat of Mark. And I think she just found that appealing.
Rudy tells the sisters that he is in international banking. Michael says that he is an IT expert for big corporations.
They were visiting for business, so they were staying at the Holiday Inn in Mesa. Cindy and our friend started hanging out with them a lot immediately. She used the word whirlwind. Within a couple weeks, they noticed that every time they dropped them off the Holiday Inn, they never invited them to their room. They always seemed to be hanging out in the lobby.
Suspicious, Cindy and her friend follow the brothers to check on their movements.
So they decided to basically spy on them. They saw that they walked right through the lobby and out through another door. And so then they just followed them to a cheap Motel 6 across the street. And somehow they convinced the desk clerk to give them their room number.
A young woman with a German accent answers the door to Michael and Rudy's room.
She said that she was a family friend. Our friend just pushed her way into the room and said, "They're in here. I know they're in here." And there she saw their shoes they'd been wearing that night, their watches they'd been wearing that night, and they're confronting this person who's German and who's saying they're not here, and they end up leaving.
The next day, Cindy and her friend return to the motel to confront the Appelt brothers. Michael and Rudy explain that the woman in their room the night before is their friend Anke Dorn, also from Germany.
They're just helping out because her husband was here on vacation and died. It was pure drama. These guys convinced these women that because they snooped on them like that, that they lost their jobs. And they lost their security clearance because of this snooping.
The brothers say that they are unable to access their money and that they have nowhere to go.
Cindy and our friend went into, oh my God, we owe you. How can we make this right for you? We're so sorry. You know, they felt terrible. They were both crying. Everything was blamed on them. Cindy and our friend bought into that nonsense.
Now feeling sorry, Cindy invites Michael to stay at her apartment.
It was an impulsive decision. She could be impulsive. She really believed that he was like a multimillionaire. She didn't want him to slip through her fingers, and she wanted to give this relationship a chance. Within a couple weeks, we were talking on the phone, and she said he told her he was going to have to go back to Germany, and the only way that that relationship could continue was to marry him, and then he could legitimately stay in the country. And I was like, really? I said, well, you're not going to marry this guy or anything, are you? Fell silent. And she said, what would you say if I told you I already had?
Michael convinced Cindy to marry him in a secret ceremony in Las Vegas on October 28, 1988, just 3 weeks after they first met.
It's the first time in our entire lives that a secret like that was kept on either end. And so I just said, I will do my best to accept him because he can't drive a wedge between us. That's not going to happen.
Fast forward 2 months to Linda's wedding on December 17th, 1988. Cindy introduces Michael to her friends.
I know I was happy for her at the time. My impression of Michael was that he and Cindy made a very nice-looking couple. But I was also thinking, this seems so fast. I wasn't going to lecture her. She seemed happy. I remember thinking, we're going to find out what happened there, and then just sort of laughing it off. I mean, it's a happy time. Cindy's married. What's not to be happy about? So everybody was in good spirits, and we had all the time in the world to talk about it afterwards. It was just a week later that it all changed, so...
When Cindy and I talked about us going home for Christmas and her getting married to Michael, I strongly suggested that she let our parents know before she got there. So, yeah, she called them.
Kathy books tickets for her and Cindy to fly home to Champaign, Illinois on Christmas Eve. Cindy mails a letter to her parents with a Christmas present wish list and news about Michael.
He couldn't come with Cindy for Christmas because he was going to have to go back to Germany and visit his mom. I was relieved that it was just going to be her and me going back. I was looking forward to the plane flight, getting more of the scoop on that relationship.
3 days before the sisters' flight home for Christmas, Cindy calls Kathy. She tells Kathy about a phone call to her ex-boyfriend, Mark Maurer.
She was very distraught. Oh, Katie, I did something really stupid. I called Mark, and I told him that I had married Michael, and he got really mad at me, and she ended up confessing that she still had feelings for Mark. He said, I'm likely coming over to Phoenix over the holidays, and maybe we can see each other. And I said, we're going to obsess over all of this when we get on the plane, so don't even worry about it.
Cindy checks in with Kathy the day before the trip.
We were flying out the next morning, and she contacted me, and she said, when you get off work, call me, and we will finalize the details. Cindy had arranged a little Christmas party gathering with some friends before she left. I worked the evening shift at my job. So when I got home, I just thought, oh, I'll have a message from her. And there was nothing. You know, there was nothing on the answer machine. And I called one of those friends who said, Cindy never showed up. And I mean, Cindy had organized this thing. That was a big sign of something being wrong. I called several times, leaving her messages.
Hello, are you guys there? Hello? Anybody there? I need to talk to you guys about the morning. What time are we leaving? Hi, it's me. I'm worried. Where are you? Please, 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 please call me before you leave for the airport. Bye.
But then Michael called.
Nobody home? Miss Michael, Upper. Please pick up the phone.
It went back and forth. I called several times, and he would hang up on me. And 1:30 in the morning, he calls me, and he's wasted. I mean, slurring his words. And he's yelling, "Where's Cindy? Where's Cindy?" And I'm like, "Where's Cindy? You tell me where she is."
Minutes later, Kathy telephones a friend to ask her to go to Cindy and Michael's apartment to investigate.
She knew him better than me and felt like she could communicate with him. She gets over there. She's like, he's passed out and snoring in the bed. Cindy's purse is here. And her keys are here. Michael got up and was totally intoxicated. And he's saying that she ran out of the house because she got a phone call from an angry man. Which, of course, I'm thinking 100% is Mark Maurer, who said he was coming back in over the holidays. It's like, oh my gosh, she's run off with Mark. I just know that's what it is. She's just drinking herself into oblivion and being impulsive and crazy and, on a bender with Mark. It just didn't make sense why she would call me, if that was the case. And this friend and I decided to call the police.
Mesa police agree to designate Cindy a missing person.
I was up all night. Police calling me and giving a statement and what I knew, and I didn't know what to tell my parents. I finally called them 5 in the morning, and I said, "Cindy's missing. Her face is on the news."
Kathy's parents ask her to catch her flight home so that she can join the rest of the family for Christmas. Kathy leaves behind Cindy's ticket for her sister to collect later.
I left her with a note. I wrote, "I love you. Don't worry about anything. It's all going to be okay."
Kathy departs Phoenix Airport bound for Illinois at 7:30 a.m. on December 24th.
I was a detective at the Mesa Police Department. In December 24th, I received a phone call from Sergeant George Felger to help with a missing persons case with German speakers being involved. I was the only fluent-speaking detective, I believe, in the entire valley, let alone the Mesa Police Department. At 8:45, I arrived at Michael Apelt's apartment. We knocked several times, and then finally, Michael Apelt opened the door. And then when I introduced myself to him in German, he was very, very surprised. We interviewed him about his wife coming up missing. Michael's story was that Cindy received a phone call, and she got upset, and then she told Michael she had to go somewhere with someone that's waiting outside, and she would meet them at Bobby McGee's. Michael, Rudy, and Anka ordered a table for 4, stating that Cindy was going to meet them there for dinner. They ordered food, ate their dinner, and Cindy still hadn't showed up. Michael gave permission to search the apartment and to search the car that they had. He didn't seem worried at all. He seemed like matter-of-factly and very cooperative. He provided a receipt that he had dinner at Bobby McGee's. We noticed the $400,000 insurance policy in the living room and the double indemnity. The policy became effective either that day or the day before. So if Cindy were to die accidentally, it would be $800,000 payout. And then there was another $100,000 policy that they opened, double indemnity, which would bring the entire sum to $1 million. And it kind of concerned us.
The phone in Cindy's apartment rings mid-morning. Her ex, Mark Maurer, leaves a message.
Hi, say it's Mark, California. There's some reports that you've been reported missing or whatever. I'm in Palm Springs now. Time now is about 10 a.m. local time. Please give me a call.
I pointed them to Mark. Definitely. Mark Maurer was the only person on the planet Earth that she would have run out of the house for like that. Would have been him. I was clinging to that story because it was the best option.
We found out that he had a former girlfriend in Illinois where he lived that was killed. So Mark Maurer became a person of interest immediately. 2 p.m. on December 24th, Pinal County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call. A father and son had just been driving through the desert and they came across the body. We had already put out a attempt to locate on Cindy, so Pinal County picked up on that and they contacted us. Our detectives and another detective from Pinal County went to the scene. They found a white female laying off the side of the road, and she had blood all over her. The scene was extremely violent. She was stabbed in the back at least 3 times, in the front once. One of the wounds in the back penetrated the heart, which was the wound that killed her. And her throat was cut to the point where only her backbone was still intact. We found footprints around the body and one on the forehead. And there were tire tracks found on the ground near the body. We did all the comparisons, and from the missing person report, we suspected we had Cindy Monkman as the victim. It obviously went from a missing persons case to a homicide. It was escalated right away.
The whole house is decorated for Christmas. We're sitting in this Christmas tree room and presents everywhere and decorations. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting to hear from the police. Trying to convince ourselves. She's holed up in a hotel with Mark somewhere. I remember my dad saying, "It feels way worse than that to me."
The Monkman family receives a phone call the night of Christmas Eve.
Watched my dad hang up the phone. I knew it was bad. And he had us put our arms around each other. He said they've recovered Cindy. She's not alive.
Detective Davis asks Michael to come to the Mesa Police Department. He arrives with his brother, Rudy.
We told Michael that the body we found was that of his wife. He became very upset. He started crying, started yelling, "Why her? Why me?" And he couldn't believe that happened. We really weren't focused on the brothers at that point, but they were coming into focus. We told them that we had to get evidence to be able to exclude them from suspicion. We collected saliva, head hair, pubic hair for our lab to compare to evidence found on the body and at the scene. They had no problem helping us with the exclusionary evidence.
Investigators examined the car that Michael and Rudy used in the days leading up to Cindy's disappearance.
Michael did tell the police that Cindy's car was in the shop, and so they had to rent another car. They rented a Subaru. The police went and looked at the cars. They inked the tires so they would have an imprint of what the tread was like. They examined the trunk. They put luminol to see if there was any traces of blood, but there was no physical evidence at all linking Michael and Rudy to the crime scene. Mesa and Pinal County were following up on all kinds of leads. They were chasing down Mark Maurer as a suspect. Just the most remarkable coincidence, Mark had a previous girlfriend who had been murdered.
Mark Jones, who was the lead homicide investigator, he flew to Los Angeles to meet with Mark Maurer to interview him on his whereabouts and his possible involvement in this case.
Mark describes his movements around the time of Cindy's murder to the detective.
He rented a car to drive to Palm Springs, where his mother lived, and he and his mother and his sister were going to spend Christmas Eve together. He had rental car receipts, and he had his mother and his sister as alibi witnesses. It turned out to be impossible for him to have been in the Phoenix area to murder her.
The detectives rule Mark Maurer out of the investigation. They charge him with no crime in relation to Cindy's death.
We were having meetings every morning to see what we found, where else we had to go. On January 3rd, 1989, I received a telephone message from Michael Appelt telling me about a threatening message he received on his phone's answering machine. That I needed to come down to the station to hear the phone call and to do whatever we had to do to take action on that threat. I told him, don't erase the message, take the tape out and secure it. On the following day, Michael brought the message to the Mesa Police Department.
Hear what I have to talk. I have cut through the throat of your wife, and I stab and more frequently in the stomach and the back with a knife. If I don't get my stuff, your girlfriend is the next, and then your brother. At last, it is you. Do it now. If not, you see what happens. My eyes are everywhere.
The message was pretty clear. But what's alarming about it is at the very beginning of the message, he had cut Cindy's throat and stabbed her in the back and the front, and that he wanted his drugs, and that if you can't get them, then your brother and girlfriend will be next to die, and then finally it will be you, me and Michael.
Hear what I have to talk. I have cut through the throat of your wife, and I stab and more frequently in the stomach and the back with a knife.
The thing that was peculiar about it was the grammar was wrong, the syntax was wrong, and I told the detectives that this was a translation, this was not someone speaking English from America. If you translate it straight back into German from the English, the literal translation made perfect sense in German. And the only Germans we were dealing with was Michael, Anka, and Rudy. I asked my sergeant to put a surveillance team on the house. That same evening, I received another phone call from Michael Appel claiming that there was 2 black men at the door wanting their drugs or their money.
I have to talk is important. 2 people come in my home. One minute, yes.
Hello? 2 people was here at the door.
When?
A few minutes ago.
None of the detectives that were there on surveillance all night ever saw any black people come to the door. I said, we need you to come to the station to talk with you individually so we can do composite drawings of these suspects. The next morning, Michael sat down with forensic artists. The end result of the composite was a young black man with a suit and expensive sunglasses on. It looked like one of the actors from Miami Vice. They were big Miami Vice fans. After interviewing Michael and Rudy, we believe Michael and Rudy were definitely involved.
The police decide to officially question Michael, Rudy, and Anka in connection with Cindy's murder.
Michael and Rudy were being interviewed several hours. And Michael was confronted with, we think you killed your wife. And he totally denies everything. He says it's a joke. All the while, he refers to his wife as my wife and not as Cindy, which in interrogations is a big clue as to the suspect distancing themselves from the victim because they'd done something bad to them. And during this long time period, we were watching Anka Doran in the hallway. She at one point put her head between her legs and put her hands behind her head like something was wrong, like she was going to get sick. Detective Jones was made aware of that. He was waiting for a sign like that of breaking. He started showing her pictures of Cindy, her half-decapitated head, her body with the stab wounds, and her blood and everything out there at the scene. He kept after her, and he just told her, look, you need to tell the truth. She tried to cover her eyes, and that was when she started turning and telling what really happened.
The night of the 23rd, Michael showed up at the motel where Anka and Rudy had been staying. She and Rudy were following Michael, and she says she didn't know that Cindy was in the car. But she claims that when they got out to the desert, that Rudy got out of the car, she stayed in her car, and she didn't see anything. She realized afterwards that they had murdered Cindy because they had bloody clothes. They had to go back to the motel to clean up and then dump their bloody clothes, and then they went out to create their alibi by going to Bobby McGee's. Dorn told us that Michael planned all the cover-up afterwards. He began to be concerned that the tire tread on their rental car might be traced back to the crime scene. She told us that they had driven the car down to a riverbed and deliberately tried to destroy the tread on the tire. Anka's story was corroborated by the fact that the rental company had to change the tires. The police processed the car. It had brand new tires on it. Michael, Rudy, and Anka decided that they would travel to LA and randomly picked a homeless person off the street and offered him $20 to read a message back into Cindy's answering machine.
Hear what I have to talk. I have cut through the throat of your wife, and I stab and more frequently in the stomach and the back with a knife.
It was a message that was dictated by Michael in German, but Anka, who had the better command of the English language, wrote it out.
Police officers arrest Michael and Rudy Appelt for first-degree murder on January 6, 1989.
We got a call from the detectives, and they told me that they had arrested Michael and Rudy. There was a feeling of satisfaction because justice is coming.
Prosecutors strike a deal with Anka, immunity in return for her testimony at Michael and Rudy's trials. They then find a piece of evidence that clinches the case.
The evidence that was found at the crime scene included only one usable tennis shoe print where you could actually identify the tread on the ground. The sole was patterned. When they searched the apartment, there were no tennis shoes. They found a roll of film, and one of the pictures was a picture of Michael. He was wearing a pair of shoes, and it was obvious that they were Reebok tennis shoes. It matched the shoe print at the scene, but also we were able to match it to the footprint on her forehead. So the logical inference is that he destroyed the shoes because they had Cindy's blood on them.
Michael Appelt's trial began on April 18th, 1990 at the Pinal County Courthouse in Florence, Arizona.
It was probably the most complex case that I've ever handled. Anka Dorn provided us with so much corroborating evidence. She was a key to the case, really. Michael and Rudy had hatched this plan to find a woman to marry, take insurance out on her life, and murder her. Michael told Anka Dorn that when Cindy signed the insurance papers, she signed her death warrant.
Find defendant named Michael Appelt guilty of the crime of first-degree murder.
On August 13th, 1990, Michael Appelt was sentenced to death on the charge of first-degree murder.
5 months later, a jury also finds Michael's brother Rudy guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentences him to death.
When they kill your best friend, it shakes your world. They killed somebody so full of life and love and forever damaged a family.
A part of me wishes I had just scooped her up and just gotten her away from him, you know. I miss her voice, I miss her. I miss those times, you know, I miss our bubble. It's bittersweet because I think, well, I did have it for 29 years. I don't know how I would have gotten through our childhood without her. But she's a big person to miss, and I'm living this life for both of us.